What is going on, everybody? Happy Thanksgiving. Welcome to NFL Live Before Lock, presented by OwnersBox. I'm Eric Lindquist. Smash the like button. It is just Matthew Gajewski, Matt_Gajewski over on Twitter, and myself, Eric Lindquist, at Eric Lindquist on the Twitters. Good to see you all this fine morning. Excited to talk a little bit of pigskin here. Hopefully you get to go out in the yard with your family, play a little bit yourself. But, you know, there's professionals that are going to be at it. 3 games today on tap. Excited for that. Matt, how you doing, my dude?
Doing great. Love Thanksgiving. No longer have to mull over my decisions with Marvin Jones, who's burned me on Thanksgiving for 18 straight years.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very thankful that Marvin Jones is hopefully spending Thanksgiving with his family, and I don't have to even think about him. Well, I'm still thinking about him, but I don't have to play him.
Yeah, he's still free real estate in the back of your head. I will say, Marvin Jones, there's so many times that I remember Thanksgivings. So I guess the worst one is that the very first Thanksgiving I ever spent with my in-laws, I was winning $1 million starting the last football game. And then I was winning 250K. I was in second with like 3 plays left in the lead. Like, it was just garbage time. And I was like, all right, I just can't have 4 points or whatever it was to some random running back. I can't even remember the scenario because I've had this scenario both on Christmas and on Thanksgiving. Ends up taking it, housing it. I won $200.
That sounds like DFS, man. I'm sorry. That's especially bad on a holiday because I don't know about you, but I get really excited for these slates, look forward to the downtime and playing DFS.
Yeah.
And Thanksgiving has not traditionally been a good day for me, largely at the hands of Marvin Jones. So I'm excited to run it back and redeem myself. So hopefully we can both do that.
Well, largely at the hands of Marvin Jones. At least it wasn't your family. Again, some people, this is a stressful time.
It has nothing to do with my family.
That's what I'm saying. Some people are not blessed with the family of a Matt Gajewski, but somebody who is a culinary expert such as yourself had to come from some strong roots. That's for sure. Shout out Jordan Klein hanging out there as well. Feeling fantastic, feeling good out there in the California sunshine. It's a beautiful day to be alive, everybody. But I'm excited to talk some football here. I think Thanksgiving is phenomenal. Obviously, there's a lot of late swap that you're going to have to pay attention to throughout the day, unless your lineups are just dead, in which case, enjoy some time with loved ones and your family. But anything you want to talk about with this slate before we dive in, because there are so many things. We're going to go game by game as well, which is kind of a nice change up for us.
Yeah, it's 3 games. It kind of operates more like a showdown, not in gameplay, but the ownership factor. If you're playing small field stuff, you're really going to have to think about this. Duplication is going to be something that you'll see on these slates, especially with DraftKings and FanDuel pricing the slate down a little bit. I think they did that intentionally. So casuals playing on today's slate can jam in players they actually like. So you will run into duplication, and then you'll also run into a lot of ownership. And when we talk about players, like 20% owned on a slate like this is not heavily owned. So just be aware of that. Players are going to get up to 60, 70% in some cases, depending on your field size. So it just operates a little bit with more nuance than a normal slate.
More nuance than a normal slate is a really good way of kind of encapsulating what we're looking at. We're looking at playing guys against our defense. We're looking at how we can flip the builds and find some construction. And one of the easiest ways to do that is with the Sims tool, with the lineup generator here at Stochastic. So we have some great deals coming down the pipeline. I'm going to talk about them throughout this program. So get excited. We got some Black Friday stuff coming to you on Thursday, Thanksgiving Thursday. Excited for that. Excited for some of these offers that we have for you guys to be able to check out the tools. And hey, we're going to be checking in with them throughout this program, starting with Detroit, Green Bay. 8-point spread now, opened a little bit short of that. And obviously lots of injury news here with the road Green Bay side. And that's where we begin our tour. Aaron Jones, he will not be playing football. We ended up getting Jordan Reed in for football, but Luke Musgrave now also going to be on the IR. Lots of the walking wounded out there in Green Bay. And I mean, does that just... This is one of the more publicly backed teams you will ever see. Like 90-something% of the money coming in on the Detroit side of things. Makes sense. They're 8-2 and they're not missing a million pieces, it would seem, on the offensive end. But we're starting on the Green Bay side. Jordan Love pulling absolutely zero ownership relative to some of these other quarterbacks. What is your interest level in him and super contrarian stacks on the Green Bay side?
Yeah, just quickly before getting to Love, it's not just the skill position players. This team is super banged up on defense. No Jair, no Javonte Campbell. I mean, Even some of the depth pieces like Dontavian Wicks isn't going to play, which actually I think helps us. It sort of narrows the receiving rotation. And in addition to Luke Musgrave being out, Josiah DeGuara is not going to play either. So, I mean, we know a lot about the tight end rotation now. Should be Tucker Kraft like out there largely to himself. So to get to Jordan Love, I actually do have some interest in him. I'm playing large field only today. It's just, a different offerings from DraftKings compared to the main slate. There wasn't as much small field stuff I was interested in. So playing a lot of the large field. And I was pleasantly surprised to see a decent amount of Jordan Love come up in the Sims. I think that's price driven. They're going to be throwing a lot as underdogs against Detroit, who I don't see really having a problem scoring, especially with these inactives. But now the stacks are just way more clear. You know exactly who's going to be on the field for Green Bay when we didn't have that before. So I don't think Jordan Love is a good player by any means, but I do think with him dropping back a lot today against Detroit, who doesn't really have the best pass defense, you got to worry about their pass rush. And I still think the Packers O-line is decent. He should be able to drop back a lot. And as long as he can get the ball reasonably close to these receivers, I think he's actually a really good leverage play in the large field stuff.
Yeah, 8 yards per attempt, basically, on the season. Not a ton of rush equity. It's just one of those spots where it's like out of 20 lineups, like playing the $3.20 max, playing the large field millie, which filled very early for everybody who was interested in that. I only ended up with a couple entries because I just didn't think it was going to fill when I woke up.
Same. I only have one in there.
Yeah, I've got 4. It's like, what did I do? No, I've got 2 in the millie, and I have 2 in like the new $20 version that I just double stacked with it. So yeah, I've got 2 entries as well. It was so weird to see it filled by the time we got up. But anyway, the $3, the dollar, everything, the mini max as well, whatever you're playing in like the largest field tournaments, I think getting to a little bit of him makes some sense. You have cheap pass catchers on the other side, not just at the wide receiver position, but I guess Tucker Kraft's the guy that I'm just having a tough time figuring out exactly what I want to do with here. As I look around the industry, there's some ranging projections, ownership projections. Most of it, it seems pretty warranted on a slate like this, but there's an opportunity cost. I mean, 12.7%, that's actually on the low end of what I'm looking at across the entire industry at 2,500. We have Jake Ferguson, George Kittle, Sam LaPorta, Logan Thomas, a lot of guys pulling a little bit more ownership than him. You don't have to get crazy off the board here. We're going to want to find ways to leave salary on the table as is, but like 2,500 Tucker Kraft allows you to get everything you want and more into your lineups. What's your interest level in him stacking him up with Jordan Love here at 2,500, the absolute min on DraftKings?
I like Tucker Kraft a lot. And just one little nuance thing at the tight end position, ownership is pretty flat. So while we do have Tucker Kraft 5th in ownership, there's not even 10% between him and Jake Ferguson. So you're not really gaining a lot of leverage by playing him, but you do gain a lot of salary savings, which is what you just highlighted. When you play Tucker Kraft, you can jam all of the studs. So I think he's honestly a really good play with the injuries that we've seen on the Green Bay side. And I don't think you have to stack him with Love. You can play him by himself just as a salary relief piece. If you don't know Tucker Kraft, he came out of South Dakota State as a tight end.
Jackrabbits, baby.
Yeah, where Dallas Goedert went, actually had really good athletic measurables. Like the guy ran a sub 4.7 40-yard dash, pretty good receiving metrics. They just drafted 2 tight ends, and Luke Musgrave beat him out to begin the year. So as far as like a metrics profile goes as a prospect, he looks like he can be a fine receiving option. He's not like a 6th offensive lineman we see with some of these backup tight ends. So I think you feel pretty good about that. He's going to be on the field. They just don't have anybody else. So, I mean, I don't think the projection on him is quite as fragile as some other backup tight ends that we've seen jump into starting roles this year. So I like Tucker Kraft a lot.
Yeah. Is he the kid that tore his ACL against Iowa in like the first game of the year last year?
I don't think so, but I don't watch a lot of FCS football.
Okay. I watched that game because I bet South Dakota State to beat Iowa in that one. They had a
money line
squad. Oh, I had the money line. Oh yeah. It was
what the score of that, you remember the score of that game?
It was like 9-6 or some bullshit. It was something like that.
It was, I believe it was either 7-3 or 10-3, and Iowa didn't score a touchdown. They had a safety and a field goal. I think they had a safety and 2 field goals or something. And they got like to a weird score that looked like they scored a touchdown, but they didn't.
Yeah. The tight end from South Dakota State, I remember being the best player on the field, and he got hurt in like the first series or something. It was a lot of pain and suffering watching that football game, kind of like watching any Iowa football game, but it is tight end university. So there's that. And obviously South Dakota State, probably the FCS version of tight end university. So that's kind of ironic talking about them, but thought Tucker Kraft was somebody to talk about because the Sims tool, positive ROI on him as a specific player. Obviously it really matters what else is going into your lineups, but one of those things you want to be careful of, just looking at the simulated player ROI. It really does matter what else is going into that lineup, which is why just being able to rank and order them, such an amazing feature that we have going there. Again, great offers coming down the pipeline here for you later in the program. But want to talk about A.J. Dillon. This is the conversation piece of these Green Bay Packers, no doubt about it. He's pulling 23.4% ownership. There's no Aaron Jones, and Patrick Taylor kind of expected to be the number 2 behind him. I do like the over. I mean, it was sitting at like 19.5 earlier of the receptions plus yards. It's now up to 23.5 rushing plus reception yards for Patrick Taylor, but that's still just like, that's a value thing. A.J. Dillon has been inconsistent. He's been so tough to get a gauge on. You have 9 rushes for 77.8 yards per carry against Pittsburgh. And then you have spots like Minnesota, where he's 1.8 yards per carry, 2.2 yards per carry against Detroit. Just mad inefficiency at times. Has seen some more receiving volume, but A.J. Dillon's one of those players I'm trying to talk myself into getting more of in the event that Detroit doesn't go out and absolutely slam them. But how do you feel about A.J. Dillon at 5,400 as like a value piece at the running back position?
I don't feel great about it, and I think it's just because we have alternatives in the same price range who we'll talk about. I don't know what the split's going to look like. I think Patrick Taylor is going to play, maybe not like an Aaron Jones level, but a considerable amount. I would be shocked if he saw any fewer than like 20% of the running back opportunities. And fortunately, we've had this situation before earlier in the year when Aaron Jones was out, where Patrick Taylor was the change of pace back for this team. We also don't have Emmanuel Wilson here, so it's pretty clearly going to be Patrick Taylor. It's just how much do you think he siphons away from A.J. Dillon? Because this offense isn't set up for rushing success. The strength of Detroit's defense is up front. A.J. Dillon's a terrible player. The Packers actually, I think, have a decent offensive line. It's not good, it's not bad, but team total for this team is not high. The scoring expectation's pretty low. And then you do a value plays that I'm just looking to get to over A.J. Dillon really across the slate. Whether that's Tucker Kraft, there's a ton of receivers, even on this team, that are really cheap. And then Charbonnet being on the slate too. You don't have to jam in A.J. Dillon at running back. And the last thing on the running back position, there's quite a bit of opportunity cost. Gibbs and Montgomery both project well. You obviously have Pollard on this slate and McCaffrey. So just occupying one of your roster spots with A.J. Dillon doesn't seem like a great idea to me. Even in the large field stuff in the Sims, I wasn't getting a ton of him. And I think it's just because of alternatives and opportunity cost.
Well, let's round it all together. We talked about Tyler Kraft at the tight end position for value. We talked about, A.J. Dillon, somebody that I'm kind of with you. I'm trying to talk myself into it. I'm going to play a little bit of Patrick Taylor, actually, just to try to flip the build in salary, or in builds that I leave very little salary on the table. Those are going to kind of be the ones where, it's more of like a necessity to get to a player like Patrick Taylor, where I don't know, him and DJ Dallas. I think DJ Dallas for DraftKings purposes maybe has more of a PPR role where that could really work out for him. But it's just a very fragile projection, I think, for both A.J. Dillon here, who it's going to be pretty touchdown dependent relative to some of these other players that I think just are going to get crazy volume in the McCaffreys and the Pollards, obviously. But even in his range, it's tough because of Zach Charbonnet. But let's go to the wide receiver position and round out this football team. And then I'll give you guys your first offer of the day because I'm lovely like that. But the wide receiver position, breaking this down is just an absolute headache, but they're all cheap. You want to take some shots. Jordan Reed ended up pretty chalky, even on Jaden Reed, sorry, on the main slate on Sunday. Got involvement in the rushing attack, ended up having a end around that he took 32 yards to the house. So you get a little bit of equity there, 4,200. And Christian Watson got involved in the end zone for the first time, in a long time, since his first game back in week 4 against Detroit, the same Detroit team. But God, it's so hard for me to want to click on him at 4,300 when there's just, it's so uncomfortable. Dobbs, Watson, Reed, help me parse through how we should handle the Green Bay passing situation.
Yeah, no Wicks. So I think it's more clear than it has been in previous weeks. You should have Jaden Reed in a full snap share. That's kind of been the hang up for me with Reed in previous weeks and why I haven't gotten a lot of him. He was splitting time with Dontavian Wicks, and he was still able to produce even with that timeshare. I think people just assume Christian Watson's the wide receiver 1 for this team. And I don't really know if that's an assumption we can make at this point. He's been bad. he does play a full-time role, but I mean, his draft capital is not that much different than Jayden Reed. They were both second-round picks. Watson was a few picks ahead of him. But at this point, like, what's to say Christian Watson is the locked-in wide receiver one in this offense? What I will say is both him and Jayden Reed are really cheap, and Romeo Doubs coming in at $5K is kind of laughable, being that much more expensive than the other two receivers. This is a tricky situation, though, because both of them are going to be owned on this slate as salary savers. I like using them in stacks with Love and situational one-offs where I've leveraged elsewhere. But if you're playing large field stuff, I mean, there's Jackson Smith and Jigba. You have some cheaper Cowboys and other options on the slate. I think you can get to Washington is Curtis Samuel. So one-off Christian Watson and Jayden Reed, I think, is a little tricky. Just make sure you're being mindful because they're going to be owned as the primary salary savers at the receiver position on this slate. So for me, it's going to be stacks with Love. And then otherwise, I'll be looking to mainly play these guys in spots where I have leverage elsewhere or as runbacks to Lion stacks.
Favorite play from the Green Bay side?
I think it's got to be Tucker Kraft. What do you think?
Definitely Tucker Kraft. I'm right there with you. Sims Tool loves him. Highest simulated player ROI. There's a reason that we led off the program going Jordan Love directly to Tucker Kraft. I think 2,500 gives you so much utility to get to so many of these pieces on this slate and kind of mix and match. As I look at my top, I mean, Jordan Klein, pull up the pre-contest simulator here. I know Jordan Klein's always building out lineups here before this show. Look at this. It's so beautiful. Directly on the screen. Simulated player ROI. In my lineups, it's a little bit higher. 11.4% simulated player ROI. 9.5% there. Again, it's all relative to the ensemble of the lineups that you are generating and then putting them together and being able to have our projections do a lot of the work for you. And hey, there's a great opportunity to jump into the low price point right now using promo code Black Friday. Yeah, you heard me. That's for the OS. It's actually promo code. Where is it at? Sims. I know it's promo code Sims, right? Thank you. Okay. It says it differently on the sheet, but you know what? It's Black Friday, friends. Promo code Sims, 50% off any of the packages that we have here at Stokastic. Now, that is whether you want it to be the Sims data package or the Max package, no matter what. 50% off right now, Black Friday here for the Sims. You want to fire these puppies up? I'm doing this early on in the program so you can have some, 42 minutes to be able to play with it, adjust some settings yourself. We have so many great features that are just integral. There we go. It's a massive part of my process. And that is what I'm looking at doing every single one of these slates. It is especially amazing for short slates. And now we have so many slates available to you. We have the Green Bay and Detroit showdown if you want to go and build those out. Washington, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, as well as the afternoon 2 gamer. Those are all available using our Sims tool here. And then you want to simply go to the percent by first. You want to make sure you take a look. It's in our book, Reading Rainbow. I don't know why I had to do that, but just saying 30% to first. If you're playing in the largest field GPPs, you want to put that all the way up. Ramp it up, see what shows up in the simulated player ROI, see your exposures, your leverage relative to the field, as well as being able to rank your lineups, which is something the top players have been doing forever. They've built out tons and tons of lineups and they find their best ones. Just group it by simulated ROI, and I guarantee you're going to have a lot more fun than you have been playing NFL DFS. So again, promo code SIMS, 50% off, my friends. Great stuff. Let's jump over to the Detroit side where, yes, they don't have a Tucker Kraft. They don't have anything of that nature. But what they do have is a quarterback in Jared Goff, who is coming off of probably his worst game of the entire season. 3 interceptions against the Chicago Bears. Didn't have all of it there, but did enough to win that football game. Still ramping up the completions. You still have Amon-Ra St. Brown here. How are you looking at utilizing Jared Goff on this 3-gamer?
I'm going to come in slightly underweight to Jared Goff. And I think this is just a price-adjusted projection thing combined with ownership. He's actually drawing a decent amount, which is a surprise to me. I understand that they're the team that's favored, no Jair. Matchup's definitely not hard against Green Bay's secondary. But for a guy drawing nearly 15% ownership on a team that wins in so many ways, it's kind of tricky for me to get Goff. You also run into the problem where the stacks are a lot more expensive compared to a guy like Jordan Love or even Brock Purdy, honestly. So you can stack some of those other quarterbacks as a whole, like looking at the stack price, it's cheaper with a better projection. So for Goff, I mean, it's a little tricky. Detroit's pass rate over expectations, also one of the lowest on the slate. This is a team that is very willing to just run the ball down your throat, for a lack of a better way to say that. So he's one of my least owned quarterbacks. He's actually only ahead of Sam Howell in my personal portfolio. That's for large field. I don't really see that being any different in small field, though. Small field stuff, I'm really isolating in on Dak and Purdy. So I think I'm going to come underweight largely to Detroit's passing attack and Goff more so than anyone else. I'm willing to use the Detroit receivers and tight ends as one-offs, and then the running backs, of course, I'm playing. But Goff will be one of the lower owned pieces for me in my own personal portfolio. How much Goff do you have?
I haven't actually finished up exactly how much I'm going to get to. He's currently only in one of my 40 lineups that I've built.
Okay, so we're similar
not much.
then.
So I'm really shorting him. It would look like. I mean, Dak Prescott is showing up nonstop for me. Brock Purdy is showing up nonstop.
What field size are you playing?
I'm playing the largest. Yeah, I'm playing like the $3. I'm playing, like large field tournaments. So it's going to be
same.
It's going to be, I think, just a smattering of the top end guys, the Brock Purdy's. I think Geno Smith is an interesting conversation piece. I mean, I assume that he's going to be healthy. It's a weird assumption to make. It's a short week, and he got really dinged up right there at the tail end of that Rams game. So had Drew Lock come out for a couple of snaps, and it's just one of those where I could see that ownership coming in even lower. They're home dogs here, and there's obvious pass catchers that you want to stack them up with. So I think for like large field tournaments, my final exposure is really going to come down to how chalky I'm allowed to be on that final game. Again, that's the late swap element to this one. But considering this is the first game right out of the gate, I'm happy to kind of hit eject on it and hope to God that it does not burn me. I think that that's going to be the way that I kind of play the Jared Goff stacks. But I will definitely have my Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's too good to pass up. You've got Sam LaPorta, I think, is a great tight end option as well. But it's weird because I'm just not going to be getting to Jared Goff. The Sims, nothing's really showing up for me there. It is what it is, because these running backs, this is where I want to spend the most time with this football team, because Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, if you're playing year-long fantasy, you just start either one of them every single week and you don't think twice about it. But from a DFS angle, this is an absolute headache because, one, they're not cheap. And two, as you said, this team wants to run the ball down your throat. And looking at the snap breakdown, it's now been 58% of the snaps back-to-back weeks in week 10, week 11 for Jahmyr Gibbs, 38 and 41% for David Montgomery. But there is no saying that can't flip immediately. And they were playing from behind last game. So I think there was more Jahmyr Gibbs out on the field as a result of them coming from behind, wanting his involvement in the pass game. If they put the absolute foot to the pedal here, don't they end up going to David Montgomery more in the rushing attack? For me, that's where I'm just having a tough time figuring out how to handle these running backs. How are you handling it?
Maybe they go to Montgomery a little more, but I don't think it's going to be this massive deviation from the current split. They used Gibbs around the goal line last week, which you'd think, just looking at their profiles, Montgomery would be your better goal line rusher. But it's not like Gibbs can't do that stuff. He's ceding a little bit of size, but I think this is largely going to be a 50-50 committee. But Gibbs has the more valuable role in terms of pass catching. They will use Montgomery as a pass catcher. That's not what I'm saying. But when they are in third down, hurry up stuff, again, they don't project for a lot of that today. But when they do, you still will see Gibbs out there. And I think you already did a pretty good job explaining the difference in projection we see. We do have Gibbs projected ahead of Montgomery. From a price adjusted standpoint, he's ahead of Montgomery. And I'm not really seeing the difference in ownership being vast enough where I really want to, double down on Montgomery over Gibbs. I'm coming in pretty decently exposed to both, a little more Gibbs than Montgomery in my own personal portfolio. But I mean, at the end of the day, this Detroit team, very willing to run the ball. Awesome matchup. For those of you playing multiple lineups, I would suggest just getting a healthy exposure to both. If you're only running one and you need to choose, I prefer Gibbs in a vacuum.
I'm probably on the opposite end. I don't know what it is about it. It just feels to me like it was maybe a little bit game script adjusted. David Montgomery's first week back last time. And again, I think what's really playing with my head and probably, a lot of other people is just seeing the identical snap share, but I don't think it really shows the game flow or the injury situation. David Montgomery hadn't played since week 6. He ends up 7-8. I think they had by week 9. So then, yeah, the week 10 game, I could imagine they kind of went a little bit slower with him, eased him into it. But then week 11, Jahmyr Gibbs is definitely the more explosive back, especially in the passing game. But David Montgomery, we've seen him get a bulk of these carries nonstop. And something tells me if they end up a score or two up, I would prefer to have David Montgomery as opposed to Jahmyr Gibbs because I think it might be a little bit more game script dependent. Now, that's just, again, my personal, Matt Gajewski knows ball. I kind of know ball. I'm just saying that David Montgomery, for me, feels like one of those guys that if you're up 2 scores, and this is kind of what Vegas is indicating this is going to be the game flow of this one, if you're up a score or 2 here, I would want more David Montgomery than Jahmyr Gibbs in the 3rd and 4th quarter. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I don't even disagree with you, man. At the end of the day, this is probably one of the more fragile situations in projections. Yes. You could also spin it like Montgomery is still coming off the injury. Maybe they don't want him to get extra work as he's continuing to recover. And this is a more or less a meaningless game if it plays to that scenario and they're up by 14 points. But the good thing about our tools is if you feel a certain way, there's ways you can boost projections. Like our sim tool lets you upload your own projections. You can go in there, you can bring Montgomery down, or you could bring Gibbs down a point. You can bring Montgomery up a point. You can do ROI boosts. There's ways to use the sims where if you have a personal take on a situation, especially in one like this, where coming in, this is a fragile situation in projections, you can use that to your advantage, which is what I would suggest doing if you have access to this. I broke it down how I see it. I think it's going to be largely 50-50, but it's definitely in the range of outcomes where they get up by 14 points. Montgomery is salting away the game and he gets those carries in the second half. That's very clearly in the range of possibilities. And I was just saying this, if you force me to pick one, I want to give a take for those of you that do one lineup. Yeah. I'm playing both, Eric. I'm playing a healthy amount of both.
Would you play lineups with both of them?
I don't think so, just because we've got McCaffrey, Pollard, Charbonnet. I see the argument for it, but I also think you're taking on quite a bit of risk.
Agreed.
If you do that, I would just go full Detroit onslaught, because they're probably going to have to put up 40 points. What do you think they have to put up? And plus, they're both expensive. You know what I mean? So you're not only playing 2 guys that are negatively correlated, but you're putting a lot of your salary cap into those 2 players.
If there were a time to play 2 running backs against a defense, I think this would kind of be it. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, 135 yards per game. The Green Bay Packers are giving up on the ground. That's 4th worst in the NFL. It's one of those spots where I could see this being something we look back on. And it's oh, I'm sitting on the absolute stone cold nuts with 24 from Gibbs, 25 from Montgomery, and there we go. But I'm probably not going to have too many lineup iterations, if any, of that, because I'm playing a smaller portfolio. In 150, I think you could run into spots where I would be trying to toy with that build, where it's just a complete Detroit onslaught. I think Dallas, you're running into something similar, maybe not in the rushing attack, but just onslaught capabilities throughout this slate. We have Detroit, Dallas, San Francisco, all pretty decent favorites, 6+ points across the board. I think it's pretty interesting, but I'm going to catch up on some super chats before we talk some of these whiteouts. Again, this was the game we're going to spend the most time on, mainly because I think it gets pretty quick. Washington, Dallas, San Francisco, Seattle, but want to throw it out. Jay Murphy, $5. Happy Thanksgiving. Got the logo ready. Hold my hand, Matt, he says. Oh, those are callback jokes to week 3. I'm here for week 3 callback jokes. Darius Rucker, he just wants to love you the best that he can.
That country singer?
That is a country singer and a country song and a country band and all those things. Okay.
First time I got a question right, or a pop culture reference correct.
You couldn't even say question or reference it correctly. But you know what? I'm going to give you points. Points, Matt Gajewski. Steve C, $10. Namaste from Nepal via New York. What's up, Steve C? Here on vacation, but I just wanted to give a shout out to you both for your incredible content. Good luck all today and happy Turkey Day. Dan Campbell is a dog. Dan Campbell has larger forearms than I have a neck.
Dan Campbell is the definition of a wagon. Love that guy.
Wagon season. We're going to have to do Matt Gajewski's wagon just because it is Thanksgiving and we must all give thanks for the wagon. And Ben Raza wearing a blanket like an adorable human being in that picture. Nicholas Lynn, $10. Happy Tudurkin Day, fellas. Tudurkin. That's always good. Thanks for working on the holiday for us. You are very welcome. This is the 3rd straight year Matt Gajewski and I have done this show. How happy and fortunate do you feel that you've gotten to work 3 straight Thanksgiving holidays with me?
I don't even really see it as work, man. I enjoy it. I have a blast doing the show with you every Sunday. We get to do it an extra day this week. So nothing but thanks from me. I know Greg wouldn't give them to you, but I will.
Thank you. I needed it for my ego. Just smash the like button. I need that for my ego. That would be great stuff to see. Can we get up over 500 in 2 seconds here? Again, free content on Thanksgiving. Again, I know you want to be spending all day with your families, but you guys are spending it here with us talking a little NFL. Let's go through these wide receivers and tight end options from the Detroit side, and also kind of take our first little dabble into defense, because I think this is a defense you might want to have a little exposure to here in the Lions. But from the wide receiver position, it's all about Amon-Ra St. Brown relative to CeeDee Lamb, the only other wide receiver here in this price range. Who do you prefer between the two?
I prefer CeeDee. There's actually, I mean, I understand the ceiling case for them both. I mean, these two guys can both absolutely dominate a slate. But CeeDee's volume and the pass rate over expectation in Dallas has been so high of late. I think there's a considerable gap in projection between these two. It might not look like it, but it's enough for me to go all in on CeeDee Lamb. And I mean, I'm still playing Amon-Ra. He's in a healthy amount of my lineups. I'm actually overexposed to him compared to what the field is running. That's just the case if you made me pick 1v1. But I do still want Amon-Ra. There's very few players on this slate that have a target share that just can absolutely bury you. Like, no, even the other good receivers. San Francisco spread, Seattle spread, Detroit and Dallas are not. So I want to play Amon-Ra. I have plenty of lineups with both of them that punt with like Tucker Kraft, Charbonnet, and a Packers receiver. So there's ways to get Amon-Ra and CeeDee in your lineup and still feel pretty good about your lineup. They can still include Dak. So yeah, I'm playing a ton of Amon-Ra. I think the conversation gets more interesting once you get beyond him.
I would agree. And that's where we're going. We're starting to see the snaps ramp up a little bit, just ever so slightly for Jameson Williams. And this is somebody who caught a ton of balls once upon a time, but ran around on 66% of dropbacks last week, 9% target share. That's all, but that's higher than Josh Reynolds. That was higher than your boy. Well, Marvin Jones hasn't been active forever, but just saying. Khalif Raymond, 6% target share for him as well. It was diluted. For Jameson Williams to be second in targets at the wide receiver position is kind of saying something. Now, it's a far cry from Amon-Ra St. Brown's 34% target share in week 11, but still, we're talking about anybody to get a little bit different here, putting together some Goff stacks. However, I'm not playing a lot of Goff, so it's more Amon-Ra, Sam LaPorta, and moving on with my life. How about you?
I'm playing, like, it doesn't take a lot to get over the field with Jameson Williams. True. He's like basically a single-digit guy, so I'm slightly over the field to him. But that's largely going back to the Green Bay stuff I talked about. A lot of lineups have some combination of Kraft, Reed, and Watson as like one-offs or two-offs in lineups. And I think that construction is going to be pretty chalky. You can pivot away from that by using a guy like Jameson Williams. I like the leverage you get with him. He's obviously a talented player that's underachieved to this point in his career, but comes in with first-round draft capital, just clearly very talented. And now the role is on the rise. Dan Campbell also praised him, which he's been pretty negative about Jameson Williams in the past. So I think that's just a little tidbit you can use to indicate his playing time at least remains constant, in my opinion, if not goes up. I mean, he's competing with Khalif Raymond and other players that should not be on football fields for snaps. So at this point, I think it's a little stickier than it has been, and I'm going to use him as a value piece. Again, nothing that's like super overexposed in my lineups. I'll pull up where I have him in my personal portfolio. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to get over the field with him.
All right. And now, if you're looking for a pivot off of Kraft, is Brock Wright somebody that's in your portfolio at all? I would rather play Bates from Washington. I would rather try to do something cute in that nature, somebody who might actually be on the field some more rather than a blocking tight end. But Sam LaPorta, pretty clearly the tight end you want to get to here. I'm getting right around the field. How about you?
I'm coming in slightly under, but I'm not too much under the field on him. It's just a price thing. A lot of my lineups have the cheaper construction, or looking at Jake Ferguson. We'll talk about him in a second. But I mean, he's coming off 2 bad games. I don't really read too much into that. The guy is a monster target share for the tight end position. Clearly very talented. He's their pass catcher number 2. I would still rank him over Jameson Williams pretty clearly. It's just a price thing with LaPorta. You can't play everybody. So I'm coming in a little under-owned. And I think that's also because I'm under-owned on Goff. So a lot of these like Cowboys onslaughts, stuff like that, Packers onslaughts, I have a couple of those. There's not very many Detroit onslaughts. And again, that's a pricing thing. They're just more expensive than some other teams as a whole when you come in with stacks.
Detroit defense, 17.6%. They're behind the Cowboys, behind the Seahawks. Again, the Seahawks are surprising, but it's 2,600. I actually prefer the Commanders at 2,500 against Dallas because, well, I think they'll It's just so hard for me to want to go out of my way to attack San Francisco here in this spot. But again, you're looking for a fluky pick six. You're looking for the team that maybe puts up 7 or 8. If it isn't one of those, you only have 6 defenses to choose from. Or the Lions defense at 3,200 showing up for you?
Apparently, they're my second most owned defense, but there's a pretty wide gap between the Cowboys and the Lions. I don't make any decisions with defense personally. I just use the Sims tool to guide me. It's very hard, I think, to determine when a defense is over or under owned, and the tool is awesome at doing that. So I kind of just defer this decision to them. But to break it down, I think it's pretty clear why you'd want to play them. You're facing Jordan Love with a team that's just littered with injuries. I think the offensive line's pretty good, but we're talking about maybe a top 5 pass rush in the NFL with the Detroit Lions on the other side and Aiden Hutchinson. They've gotten home against better offensive lines and better quarterbacks as well. So I have no hesitancy playing this team's defense. It's just I prefer the Cowboys if given a choice.
All right, smash the like button, everybody, as we're going to move to Washington, Dallas. But first, going to just talk quickly about our sponsor, OwnersBox. My friends, it is a great opportunity to get yourself kind of a Black Friday deal by default. $250 first match deposit bonus. When you sign up there, you can deposit $10 or more, $250 deposit up. That's the maximum you can get. In addition to a $5 lightning lineup when you sign up, a $5 contest ticket, and their main iteration of contests have been overlaying year in, year out, week in, week out. They want you to try out their site, and guess what? You don't have to deal with the defense that we just talked about. You don't have to deal with kickers or any implications of that. You can do super flex. You could stack up entire games here on this 3-gamer. You could do a lot with that money over at OwnersBox, and the Sims tool works for it. So check it out over at OwnersBox. Phenomenal stuff, and we really appreciate them. Again, their 100K kickoff, 20K to first, just like Sunday. I mean, that thing just started off here, but the Thanksgiving feast, 10K to first. Hey, that's done pretty good. Just 1,000 spots left in that. Again, pretty decent payout structure as well. 10K, just a 20% to first. I always like seeing 20% to first on the main iterations. Think that that's always a fun payout structure to have. Gets a little bit more flat as opposed to just those extremely top-heavy payouts. So Thanksgiving feast, 10K to first. They also have a couple of different showdown type contests going up there. The Wishbone, a little bit cheaper price point there as well. Really great stuff there from OwnersBox. So check them out. Up to $250 first match deposit bonus. Cool. Let's head to Washington and Dallas. The biggest favorite here on the slate here, the Dallas Cowboys, 30 implied total here going up against the Commanders. And the Commanders, I said that the defense I might prefer a little bit more over, like the cheapie there in Seattle. I don't mean it by that. I mean it like if I'm zeroing out salary, the $100 actually is kind of important when I've been hand building out a couple of deals. And their defense did get 9 sacks against the Giants. That doesn't really count, even though Tommy DeVito completely decimated them. Can only imagine what Dak Prescott's going to do to them. But from an offensive perspective, I find it ironic because I know Sam Howell was your highest owned quarterback during the main slate on Sunday. I think you said he's your lowest owned quarterback today. Tell the people why.
Unbelievably difficult matchup. I think you're basically just betting on him dropping back a lot of times, but this still comes down to scoring expectation, and they're massive underdogs on this slate. He's also extremely hard to stack. They've just widened this rotation to a point where I don't even think it's reasonable to make large bets on Terry McLaurin or John Dotson at this point. Really, probably the safest guy is Logan Thomas at this point. We're seeing Diami Brown and a bunch of receivers that wouldn't normally play filter onto the field. So Howell is really hard to stack at this point. The stacks altogether don't project that well. So I understand the case for him, but he's also drawing a pretty considerable amount of ownership when you have stacks at similar prices that I personally feel better about. He's my lowest owned quarterback. It's single digit ownership for me. I would just rather play Purdy, Prescott, even Love over Howell at this point.
Similar to what we had with Tucker Kraft, Sam Howell, don't really have an interest in him. Don't really have a ton of interest there in Jordan Love and in Jordan Love or in Jared Goff in that first game. But Logan Thomas is just the sim darling. He kind of has been a lot of this season. 3,500, 4.5% average simulated ROI in the Sims tool. As I'm looking at it right now with my portfolio of lineups, that's second highest next to Tucker Kraft here on this slate. A lot of double tight ends showing up for me. How about for you?
Yeah, I have a fair amount of that too. When I ran the sim, I got Logan Thomas third, so I don't think we're too different. I got him behind Ferguson and Kraft. He's just on the field every single play, and the receivers aren't. So it's very easy to use him as a stacking piece with Howell or as a one-off if you're running the Dallas side of this game. So no issues with Logan Thomas. He'll be my third most owned tight end in my portfolio.
Yep. He's shown up a lot for me. And, it's not the sexy play by any means. Everybody wants to play Charbonnet. It's a great last name. Things are beautiful. And he's got a great average simulated ROI for me as well. Christian Watson, that's going to be uncomfortable, friends. I'm going to try to give myself to a little bit more Jaden Reed, who it's not too negatively. Yeah, he's not down in the depths there, but Washington, the pass catchers. Again, this was going to always be the spot where I think we saved a little bit of time. I know, stacked up Curtis Samuel in bulk. He ended up getting knocked out of that game, came back. Again, he was ejected in the second quarter. That wasn't ideal, but Dotson, McLaurin, Samuel, those are the only three wide receivers I'm going to be playing from Washington in any capacity. And I don't have many. I don't have much of any of them besides McLaurin. How are you handling the wide receiver situation here for Washington?
I'm playing most of Curtis Samuel again. Hopefully he doesn't get ejected. So we could either make our money back or double down on the losses. We'll see what happens. But it's mainly a price thing. Again, it's going to be really spread. Target shares are spread. Route shares are spread for this team. So McLaurin, I think, is overpriced and overowned. Same thing with Jahan Dotson. Our sims also reflect this. The only difference with Curtis Samuel is the price tag. Like at 3,600, that's where, to me, he becomes a pivot off the Watson, the Reed chalk, which a lot of lineups are going to have as one-offs. So the only player I'm overexposed to out at the receiver position, I'm also overexposed to Logan Thomas. The only position at wide receiver I have more of the field is Curtis Samuel, mainly as a salary saver pivot off the Packers chalk.
Well, I think that kind of does it for Washington. Defense is cheap. Again, if you're going to zero out salary, they're the cheapest
Brian Robinson
team on the board. Oh, Brian Robinson. Of course, we got to talk Brian Robinson. My apologies. We don't know exactly what's happening with Antonio Gibson, but it doesn't necessarily matter all that much right now. I've got him projected as in. He's questionable. Pay attention to that news. If you need a contrarian piece, he's sitting there at 4,500. We know we can get some passing game involvement, but coming off the injury, Brian Robinson's had a pretty decent target share now in the last couple of weeks. 9 targets, 6 targets against the Giants and Seattle Seahawks, respectively, in weeks 11 and 10, respectively. So Brian Robinson Jr., oh my gosh, he's a tough one for me. I'm not getting to him nearly as much as what I was anticipating. What are you planning to do?
So I'm going to play. I purposely made it, a point to get some of him in my lineups because if Gibson is out, you're looking at a pretty low owned piece. And if Gibson's in, I'm going to swap all that right to Charbonnet and then just figure out the rest from there. But this guy's coming in around, we have him just under 15% owned. I'm trying to come in 5, maybe somewhere between 5 and 12% of my lineups. So that way I at least have a piece of him, but I don't want him to be like the deciding factor in my day. But I do think he is a pretty sneaky guy just because of the potential for the one backfield, the one backfield, and then the pivot is there with Charbonnet. So I do think he's okay to use.
Never underestimate the sneakiness, sir.
What's that from?
Yeah, see, it's a movie. I think it's Mr. Deeds. I think I literally just quoted Mr. Deeds, which is a whole thing. Jordan Klein's giving me the yes, I did. Have you ever seen Mr. Deeds? Of course you haven't. Let's go to the Dallas side, my friends. This is where it gets fun. CeeDee Lamb, he's good at football.
He's good at football. Dallas is the best team on the slate by a wide margin. You should be playing Dallas pieces. If it's small field, I think you probably have Dak, Pollard, and CeeDee, and probably Ferguson too. If it's large field, that's where the conversation gets more interesting. I still think you want to play a lot of Dak and CeeDee. We have them as under-owned. Even in the large field stuff, I was getting tons of this team. When I got them, I really took a strong look at these lineups. That's where you're getting the pivots like Jamison and Curtis Samuel. But you also get lineups with other chalk pieces, but I found myself looking mainly at Dallas onslaughts. 4 Dallas Cowboys, 5 Dallas Cowboys. So I think the best way to play Dallas in large field is to play them. Look at the onslaughts, and if you're running the chalk Dallas stack, make sure you're not like running just strictly to Tucker Kraft, the Green Bay Packers chalk, and the other chalk pieces on the slate. But they're pretty easy to get to. I'm not scared of Pollard, even though he hasn't had the best year. It's a phenomenal matchup now that Washington's traded away their whole D-line. Touchdown expectations still pretty high for him. He's run incredibly bad on the goal line with penalties, drop passes, and other weird stuff. CeeDee is the best target share on the slate. Brandon Cooks, I think, is fine. The only interesting piece to me is Gallup versus Tolbert. Tolbert's been playing more of late, and this could continue to go his way. So I do think throwing darts on Tolbert is a worthwhile consideration on this slate. And lastly, Ferguson, he's my most owned tight end. I think he's just a little underpriced compared to the role on this slate. And then the double tight end stuff. I also think Ferguson projects better and has a higher expectation than some of the cheap receivers on this slate. So one way to be contrarian is maybe just use Kraft and Ferguson. That way you avoid the Curtis Samuels of the world. You have more Dallas Cowboys with that really high scoring expectation, and you're still jamming studs because playing like a Kraft Ferguson lineup does not cost a lot. You're going to get CD, Dak, and all the stud backs you want.
Fergie Ferg, let me love you long time. Going to be good stuff. The pride of Rapid City, South Dakota, Mr. Ferguson. A lot of South Dakota talk here on this program. Never a bad thing. Not homesick, don't mind me. Feel really good, though, about the Tony Pollard exposure I have. You know why? Because it's at the field, and I don't know what else to do with it. He did score last week, so got the monkey off his back. 33%. I have right around that, and I am just fine with it. How are you handling him? And then anybody else in the running game there? God forbid we have to worry about a Hunter Lepke coming in and sniping something on a 3-gamer, or I can't even throw that out into the world. It made me sick. Rico Dowdle, I mean, yay, he's 4,600. I would prefer Antonio Gibson if he's active, actually, between the two.
Same. I'm playing a healthy amount of Pollard, currently at 44.5%, so slightly above the field. Again, no concern with the role. I think efficiency will come just being a part of this offense. And I'm using tons of onslaught. So he's with Dak, he's with CD. No issues with Pollard.
Favorite play from Washington?
Curtis Samuel, I guess.
I guess.
Can I just say NA? No favorite Washington plays.
Yeah, it's. I mean, they're massive dogs, and Sam Howell's going to draft back 45 times like he's Patrick Mahomes because Eric Bieniemy has no regard for his life whatsoever. But then favorite player on the Dallas side, like everybody.
I think my favorite play is Ferguson. He's the one I'm most overexposed to, so I'll kind of paint it that way. If you made me pick like the guy I'm most confident in, of course it's CD. But the player I have more ownership to relative to the field compared to anyone else is Ferguson.
I'm probably, CD Lamb feels like the de facto answer here. I think relative to ownership, you did throw out the one thing that I wanted to point out, which was Michael Gallup. I'm playing basically none of him, and Jalen Tolbert, I have way too much of. So that does it from the Dallas side of things. Best of luck to us all. And hey, if it ends up being Luke Schoonmaker who ends up catching another touchdown pass, you won't hear from me again. So don't.
You can play Luke Schoonmaker, tight end slate.
Scooney. So gross.
Only 10 routes, but they use 12 a lot. So you can play Schoonmaker.
Use 12 a lot, and apparently him at the goal line is a thing. Didn't he have the fumble at the goal line against the Eagles as well? He missed it by an inch.
I don't know. Was that a primetime game?
It was.
Yeah, I can't stay awake during them. I usually fall asleep before halftime.
It's pathetic. Not pathetic though, friends. You know what isn't? Promo codes for beautiful things on Black Friday deals. And right now, OddShopper, we have revamped this product more than you could believe. And well, you'll believe it now because I'm going to tell you $14.95 for the weekly, $49.95, but it gets even better with promo code Black Friday. Yes, 50% off everything at OddShopper now. It used to be independent, the Discord, where I hang out, where I linger, where I put all of my picks, and we hang out and we sweat games and I freak out a lot. But that used to be independent of the OddShopper tools, but now it is all under one umbrella. We have OddShopper, we have the expert picks, we have everything you're going to want and more for betting going here at the oddshopper.com and signing up with promo code Black Friday. You're going to get 50% off of that new price point. It is now $14.95 for the weekly for less than $8. Less than $8. You can jump in and try the OS tools, the positive EV tools, where it's a market-based approach, giving you everything you could possibly want and more in betting. Be able to just show you the top plays right at the top of the page every single day. You could log on, find some positive expected value bets, and know that you're getting in good. These tools have been back tested over and over and over, and they are profitable. You want to know? Look at Greg's Pickett right now. The guy is absolutely out of control right now, not in the DFS world, but also in the betting streets. And that's because of OddShopper and the great tool that they have developed there, Positive EV tool. So check it out. Really awesome stuff, my friends. I'm excited to just share that with you. Promo code Black Friday. Let's get ourselves over to San Francisco and Seattle. And my favorite bet of the entire day, no doubt about it. San Francisco, 6.5. It was available here as I'm looking around the marketplace, seeing if that's kind of the prevailing number here as well. It would appear so, but Man, Geno Smith going to be playing football for this one. Wasn't positive that was going to be a thing. Kenneth Walker going to be out for this one. We also got news Rico Dowdle will play Thursday. There's also a coach blurb we can at least touch on when it comes to A.J. Dillon, believing what you want to believe about LaFleur, saying that he's going to be the guy that carries the bulk of the work today. But let's start with the San Francisco side, where my highest owned quarterback is Brock Purdy. He's a little bit cheaper than Dak. I bet he gets a little bit lower ownership than that of Dak, and we'll be able to watch Dak live and see exactly what we need to do. And if I need to pivot to Geno Smith, I have no problem with it. How do you feel about Brock Purdy? Because he has all of the tools and all of the land to work with on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he's my second most owned quarterback. Feel really good about him. Awesome offense, electric weapons. Also, really unique ways you can play him. You can stack him with just about anybody. You can use him with McCaffrey. I also think you don't necessarily have to stack him. You're probably going to just naturally run into it due to it being a short slate. But even last week, we saw this. It's spread across so many positions that you don't necessarily have to stack Purdy. If he has a lot of the production coming through the air, McCaffrey scores some touchdowns. You might not want all his pass catchers. They're all expensive, but I still am playing plenty of them. Ultimately, he's going to be my second most owned quarterback, slightly above the field with him.
Yeah, he's the pride of Iowa State. Just come on now. It's just beautiful stuff. It's beautiful stuff. Mr. Irrelevant becoming more relevant by the day. It's really fun to watch. And then you get these insane amount of pass catchers, including the one guy at the running back position, Christian McCaffrey. He is now sub 9K for this slate. And I think you have to compare him to that of like CeeDee Lamb, compare him to that of Amon-Ra St. Brown, because they're the only three that exist in that price range. Who do you prefer between those three? And like, I think you're playing two of those three in a lot of lineups. At least I am. What's the pecking order? 1, 2, 3 for Lamb, Brown, and McCaffrey.
Going to be Lamb 1, McCaffrey 2, Brown 3.
Same. That was easy.
Yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Play McCaffrey. He's awesome.
You're not going to try to make Eli Mitchell a thing on a short week, are you?
No.
I thought
he's
about it.
He's not been used like last year, dude. They're not using him.
Yeah, it's you got 4 carries last week.
Yeah. He needs to find the end zone. I mean, 4 carries is not going to get you there.
All I know is that on a short week, he also had 11 carries for 42 yards in that week 3 W against the Giants in a blowout win. Now, different situation early in the season, trying to limit McCaffrey's workload on a short week, but like, I'm at least thinking about Eli Mitchell. I wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, I can see the path. That's something where I would probably just change the projections if you think that's likely.
I don't think it's likely, but it's something that, you know, if Eli Mitchell's going to be 4%, we've got him at 10.8% ownership right now. I will be able to kind of reverse engineer that because everybody is going to look at Zach Charbonnet on the other side of this one and know that he's going to be a phenomenal play. I think we probably are in agreement there. And DJ Dallas, he can get some passing game involvement, but I think I just prefer Eli Mitchell there on the event that they try to limit McCaffrey. They did that exact thing in week 3 on a short week, Thursday night Giants game, and Eli Mitchell ended up being kind of the showdown play du jour for that one as a result. But anywho, just something to think about here. And obviously late swapping into the nuts would always be fun here, but let's go to the wide receiver position and tight end position here for San Francisco, as you all smash that like button, of course, as we're working here on Thanksgiving for you. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, my God, they are awesome plays, in my opinion. You're looking at them right around 20% ownership. You said it before the show, and then during the beginning of the show. That's not a lot of ownership on a slate like this, especially when you're trying to get contrarian off of an Amon-Ra St. Brown, where if he fails and you have San Francisco stacked up or this game stacked up, it could be very, very nice.
Yeah, I'm like right with the field with these guys. Little overexposed to Purdy. And then I'm coming in pretty close on Ayuk and Deebo. If you force me to pick one, I would just say Ayuk straight up for the role. It's a little more consistent and bankable, but slightly underweight to Kittle too. It's just really spread with this team. So you're gambling on the target share being a little more consistent, and that's a tough bet to make. The projections are a lot better on both Amon-Ra and CeeDee. I certainly prefer CeeDee over all these guys. And at the end of the day, you mentioned the big 3 I'm trying to play. Some combination of CeeDee, Amon-Ra, McCaffrey. Also want to play Gibbs. Also want to play Dak. It's tough to get these guys. I think they're a little over-owned compared to the other plays on the slate. But I mean, you could see they're really good players. you could see any of them breaking one. Kittle does it 3 times a year. Debo breaks a 70-yard touchdown where he breaks 8 tackles a couple times a year, and Ayuk's just good. So it's basically just the alternatives, nothing against the players.
I'm taking a pretty aggressive shorting of George Kittle right now, and it feels awful. 3 consecutive games of 22, 23 points. I'm playing just so much Debo Samuel. It's ridiculous. I'm playing so much Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. It's ridiculous. But the one guy on San Francisco where I'm trying to get different from my Purdy shares is George Kittle, trying to trim him down, mainly because with Debo back, there generally have been some pretty pronounced splits. That has not been the case in the first 2 games active here. And maybe that's just Brock Purdy elevating his play, George Kittle being utilized differently than in the past here, even alongside Debo. But there's no doubt that he has gone ballistic. But you take away the 2 touchdowns, you could be looking at a different complexion. And at 6K, yeah, it's down in terms of price, but relative to these other tight ends, I prefer getting to LaPorta, Ferguson, all the cheapies, Tucker, Kraft we talked about already. How are you utilizing George Kittle?
I'm a little under the field to him. It's exactly what you mentioned with the alternatives. Nothing more, nothing less. Just there's a lot of really good tight end plays that fit into lineups a little better.
All right. And we head to Geno Smith coming off of a pseudo injury there. Drew Lock comes out for 2.2 seconds, takes a couple snaps, gets his cardio in, good stuff. Through 6 passes there. It's ironic. He's had 2 appearances this season, 2 for 6 in both, and just very limited sample sizes. But Geno Smith is 12.4% owned. And if my lineups need to shift to Geno Smith, I will do it. And I have no problem with it. 5,600 for him. He might end up being my highest owned quarterback on this slate if things are not going well, or if I need to find salary to try to get different or need to try to pivot above people I assume might have Brock Purdy above me. How are you feeling about Geno today?
I'm actually using a bit of him. I'll be above the field for sure, coming in around 15%. Just if he's fully healthy, people aren't treating him like he is. We don't have the injury information. It's just as simple as that.
All right. Everybody have your lineups in too. We'll go a minute or 2 over talking about this game, and then we'll get the heck up out of here to go watch football, spend time with our families, just like everybody here. And Jordan Klein, what are you doing tonight, Jordan Klein? You want to come have a drink? Oh, you're going to your family. Okay. Fuck you. Never mind. I take away all my happy Thanksgivings to you specifically. But we're going to DK Metcalf. We're going to Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Nice to see his role within this offense as well. Jake Bobo probably not going to be taking that shot. And tight end, where did the tight end go in the Seattle offense? I don't know, but they're playing a lot of 11 as they should with Metcalf, Lockett, and Jigba. How you feeling about the wide receiver position here?
Yeah, a little overexposed to Lockett, just more injury stuff, and price adjusted projections good on him. Pretty even with Smith and Jigba, like him as a pivot off the other Packers chalk. Little under to DK, just an ownership thing with him.
Okay. That was quick. I like DK Metcalf.
Yeah, we did a terrible job allocating our time, so trying to actually give takes on people.
I know. No, you were fantastic. Well, thank you for throwing me under the bus. I was trying to make sure that we talked a lot about that earlier.
I said we.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a team effort. I think this is the most important thing we can talk about with Seattle, though. Zach Charbonnet. He's going to be popular. I don't think he's popular enough. The Sims tool echoes that as well. Looking at the tools, looking at the content here at Stochastic, this is a dude you just want in your lineups because I feel pretty confident that DJ Dallas is not going to be seeing any kind of rushing volume. It is going to be a heavy dose of Zach Charbonnet. I'm going to pay attention. Does Kenny McIntosh end up being active here? I'm assuming he does. Might get a couple of looks. Bryant Kovac, the other guy, he was signed off the practice squad, but I doubt he gets elevated here. Zach Charbonnet should be getting a majority, if not all, of these carries. How you feel about him to round out our show?
Yeah, I feel awesome about Zach Charbonnet. He's potentially in line for like a 20-touch workload at a price tag of a change of pace or backup running back. So even though the matchup's not great, they're big underdogs. He's active in the pass game. He has a good size, so the goal line role is there if he ends up on the goal line. Just even in a blowout game script, what does he see? 15 touches? I mean, he's really hard to fade at that price tag.
Big time, friends. Favorite quarterback on today's slate?
Dak.
I'm going to go Brock. Favorite running back on today's slate?
McCaffrey.
We are both in line there. Favorite wide receiver?
Favorite expensive one is CD. Favorite pivot is Curtis Samuel. Just end my day now.
Yep. CD, my expensive guy, and then the amount of this Tolbert fellow I have is just uncomfortable. And then of course Ayuk, Samuel, going to get to tons of them. Rounded out tight end for me, my friend
Kraft.
Let's go Kraft. Let's go watch our guy Kraft. I'll go make some Kraft mac and cheese here. That'll be my contribution to Thanksgiving. Any final words for the people as we get out of here, Matt Gajewski?
Appreciate you guys all taking some time out of your Thanksgiving morning. Thankful for you all. It's a pleasure to be able to do this for you. So thank you again. I hope you guys have a safe and enjoyable holiday.
I hope you do too. We really appreciate being able to talk through some NFL with you on this lovely Thanksgiving day. Enjoy your family, enjoy your friends, enjoy your health. Hopefully everybody out there is doing well. We appreciate you. Hit that like button. I always appreciate it. It's a good way to show appreciation. Jordan Klein, thank you so much for being so kind to me. And I'm sorry, babe, I didn't mean it like that. Go follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski over on X. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist. Until next time, friends, Eric Lindquist signing off. Happy Thanksgiving.